The crisp autumn air of Seoul carried a blend of roasted chestnuts, coffee, and city bustle as Tasha Johnson dragged her oversized suitcase down the narrow street. Her heart raced with excitement. This was it, the beginning of her new life abroad. She had worked hard for this one-year exchange program, leaving behind her family and friends in Washington, D.C. to study at a prestigious university in South Korea. Everything felt new, vibrant, and overwhelming. Neon signs lit up the evening sky, and Korean voices filled the air around her. Tasha tightened her jacket against the chilly wind, trying to follow the directions on the map the university had given her. After nearly 24 hours of traveling, all she wanted was to get to her apartment, shower, and sleep for a week. When she finally arrived at the building, she let out a sigh of relief. It wasn't the luxury apartment complex she had imagined, but it was cozy and modern enough. She punched in the passcode provided in her welcome packet and pushed the door open. The apartment was surprisingly tidy, with sleek wooden floors, minimalist furniture, and a faint scent of cologne lingering in the air. Smells like someone lives here already, she thought, frowning. But the housing office had assured her it was a student apartment. Dragging her suitcase inside, she kicked off her shoes and stepped into the living room. That's when she noticed it. Men's sneakers lined up neatly by the door, a leather jacket draped over the sofa, and a steaming mug left on the coffee table. Her heart stopped. Before she could process what was happening, a tall figure stepped out of the hallway, his hair damp as though he had just showered. He froze mid-step, eyes narrowing in disbelief at the stranger standing in his living room. "What are you doing here?" His voice was low, calm, but sharp enough to cut through the air. Tasha's jaw dropped. "Excuse me? This is my apartment." The man scoffed, running a hand through his dark hair. He wore a black t-shirt that clung to his toned chest and gray sweatpants that hung low on his hips. His entire presence screamed authority, annoyance, and danger. "Your apartment?" he repeated, his Korean accent thick but his English clear enough. "This is my home. Get out." Tasha blinked, then shook her head, pulling out the keycard from her welcome packet and waving it at him. "Look, I don't know who you are, but the university gave me this key. I'm supposed to live here for the next year. So no, I'm not going anywhere." The man's eyes darkened, his jaw tightening. He stepped closer, towering over her. "You have 5 seconds to explain before I call security." Tasha felt her pulse quicken but refused to be intimidated. "And you have 5 seconds to stop acting like you own the whole building. Maybe you're the one trespassing." Silence stretched between them, tense and charged. For a moment, neither moved. Then, as if on cue, a phone buzzed. The man glanced at it, his expression flickering with irritation before returning to its stone-cold mask. Without another word, he turned away, muttering something under his breath in Korean. Tasha crossed her arms, refusing to back down. Whoever this man was, she wasn't about to let him kick her out. Finally, he stopped, exhaled sharply, and turned back. "Fine, stay. But don't talk to me. Don't touch my things. And don't get in my way. This is temporary. Understand?" Tasha's eyes widened. "Wait, are you saying we're roommates?" The man gave her a look so piercing it made her shiver. "Not by choice." And with that, he disappeared into his room, slamming the door shut behind him. Tasha stood there in stunned silence, her suitcase still by the door, her heart racing. She had come to Seoul for an adventure, but she hadn't signed up for this. Sharing an apartment with a stranger, an infuriating, arrogant stranger, was not part of her plan. Yet, deep down, a tiny spark of curiosity flickered inside her. Who was this man? And why did she get the feeling her life was about to become far more complicated than she ever imagined? The next morning, sunlight poured into the apartment, but the tension from last night lingered like a storm cloud. Tasha Johnson stretched in the tiny guest room she had claimed, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling. She could still hear the slam of his door echoing in her ears. She didn't even know his name yet, and honestly, she didn't care to. Arrogant, rude, and probably allergic to human kindness, she muttered to herself. She freshened up, unpacked a few clothes, and made her way into the kitchen. The fridge was nearly empty except for bottled water, kimchi containers, and cans of beer. She sighed, opening her granola bar stash from her suitcase. The sound of footsteps made her glance up. He was there again. Tall, sharp-jawed, and impossibly intimidating in a plain white shirt and dark jeans. He didn't even look at her at first, just walked past her and opened a cabinet to grab a mug. The silence was so heavy that even the kettle whistling sounded like an alarm. Finally, he spoke, his voice clipped and low. "We need to set rules." Tasha raised an eyebrow, chewing slowly on her granola bar. "Rules? This isn't a prison." He turned, glaring. "It might as well be if I'm forced to live with a stranger." Her jaw tightened. "Funny. I was thinking the same thing." He ignored her jab and continued, ticking off with his fingers. "Rule number 1. Don't enter my room. Ever. Rule number 2. Don't touch my things. Not the fridge, not the remote, not the books, not the bathroom schedule. Rule number 3. No noise after 10. I work at night and I need peace. Rule number 4. No strangers allowed, especially not loud friends or whatever you do in your free time." Tasha dropped her granola wrapper into the trash with a dramatic flick. "Wow, you've really thought this through, huh? You know what, Mr. Rulebook? I've got some of my own." His brows furrowed, clearly not used to being challenged. "Excuse me? Rule number 1. Don't glare at me like I broke into your palace. This is my home too now. Rule number 2. Don't assume I'm dying to talk to you. Believe me, I'm not. Rule number 3. I'm not your maid. Clean your own dishes." For the first time, something like amusement flickered in his eyes, but it was gone as quickly as it came. "You talk too much," he muttered. "And you sulk too much," she shot back. Their eyes locked, neither willing to back down. Finally, he sighed, brushing past her to pour his coffee. "Fine, do what you want. Just stay out of my way." He turned to leave, but she called after him, arms crossed. "I don't even know your name." He paused mid-step, shoulders stiffening. For a moment, Tasha thought he would ignore her, but then he said quietly, almost reluctantly, "Lee Min-jae." The name rolled off his tongue, soft yet heavy. He didn't turn around, just disappeared into his room, door clicking shut. Tasha stood frozen in the kitchen, repeating the name under her breath. Min-jae. It had a nice ring to it, but she quickly shook the thought away. He was impossible, infuriating, and clearly hiding something. Still, as much as she hated to admit it, living with Lee Min-jae was going to be anything but boring. The week passed in a blur of awkward silences and passive-aggressive encounters. Tasha Johnson quickly learned that living with Lee Min-jae was like living with a ghost. He was barely around, and when he moved with quiet precision, avoiding conversation, avoiding eye contact, avoiding her. He had a strange routine, disappearing for hours in the evenings, coming back late at night, and locking himself away in his room. Sometimes she heard muffled voices through the walls, phone calls in Korean, firm and businesslike. Other times she caught him slipping out with a cap pulled low over his face and a mask covering half of it. Suspicion gnawed at her. Who exactly is this guy? One Thursday evening, after a long day at university, Tasha sprawled out on the sofa with her laptop, trying to keep her eyes open while reading an assignment. The apartment was quiet. She assumed Min-jae was gone, as usual. But then, she heard the faint creak of his door. She looked up just as he walked into the living room, dressed casually in jeans and a hoodie. His hair was slightly tousled, and his face, though partly shadowed, looked sharper, more striking than she remembered. He froze when he noticed her. "What are you doing here?" Tasha raised an eyebrow. Living? You know, since this is also my apartment." He scowled, muttered something under his breath, and walked toward the door. But as he reached for his jacket, a glossy envelope slipped from his pocket and landed on the floor. "Hey, you dropped something?" Tasha said, reaching for it before he could stop her. "Don't." His voice was sharp, but too late. Tasha picked it up and pulled out the contents. Her breath caught. Inside was a promotional poster with his face on it. Lee Min-jae, dressed in a sleek suit, smoldering at the camera. Text in bold Korean letters ran across the bottom. A movie release date. Her eyes darted from the poster to the man standing frozen in front of her. Wait, give it back. His voice was firm, almost panicked. She clutched the poster to her chest, her heart racing. You're an actor? Like a real actor? With posters and everything. Min-jae stepped closer, his gaze intense. This doesn't leave this apartment. Understand. Tasha blinked, still processing. Hold on. I've been living with a Korean celebrity this whole time? No wonder you've got more rules than a prison guard. His jaw tightened. I'm not joking. If anyone finds out, especially the press, it will ruin everything. Tasha studied him, her curiosity piqued. Beneath the annoyance and coldness, she saw something else. Fear. Vulnerability. You're hiding, she said softly. Why? He didn't answer. He just snatched the poster from her hands, shoved it back into his pocket, and turned away. The silence stretched heavy until Tasha broke it with a small laugh. You know, this explains a lot. The late nights, the mask, the mysterious attitude. You're basically Batman, except with better hair. Min-jae shot her a look that could kill, but she caught the faintest twitch at the corner of his lips before he disappeared into his room, slamming the door shut. Tasha leaned back on the sofa, shaking her head in disbelief. Of all the people in Seoul, I had to end up roommates with a celebrity. Her life had just gotten a lot more complicated. The week passed in a blur of awkward silences and passive-aggressive encounters. Tasha Johnson quickly learned that living with Lee Min-jae was like living with a ghost. He was barely around, and when he moved with quiet precision, avoiding conversation, avoiding eye contact, avoiding her. He had a strange routine, disappearing for hours in the evenings, coming back late at night, and locking himself away in his room. Sometimes she heard muffled voices through the walls, phone calls in Korean, firm and businesslike. Other times she caught him slipping out with a cap pulled low over his face and a mask covering half of it. Suspicion gnawed at her. Who exactly is this guy? One Thursday evening, after a long day at university, Tasha sprawled out on the sofa with her laptop, trying to keep her eyes open while reading an assignment. The apartment was quiet. She assumed Min-jae was gone as usual. But then, she heard the faint creak of his door. She looked up just as he walked into the living room, dressed casually in jeans and a hoodie. His hair was slightly tousled and his face, though partly shadowed, looked sharper, more striking than she remembered. He froze when he noticed her. What are you doing here? Tasha raised an eyebrow. Living? Since this is also my apartment. He scowled, muttered something under his breath, and walked toward the door. But as he reached for his jacket, a glossy envelope slipped from his pocket and landed on the floor. Hey, you dropped something? Tasha said, reaching for it before he could stop her. Don't. His voice was sharp, but too late. Tasha picked it up and pulled out the contents. Her breath caught. Inside was a promotional poster with his face on it. Lee Min-jae, dressed in a sleek suit, smoldering at the camera. Text in bold Korean letters ran across the bottom. A movie release date. Her eyes darted from the poster to the man standing frozen in front of her. Wait, give it back. His voice was firm, almost panicked. She clutched the poster to her chest, her heart racing. You're an actor? Like a real actor? With posters and everything? That explains so much. Min-jae stepped closer, his gaze intense. This doesn't leave this apartment. Understand. Tasha tilted her head, studying him. Hold on. You've been acting like I'm invading your precious kingdom. And all this time it's because you're secretly famous. His jaw tightened. I said give it back. But Tasha was on a roll now, curiosity bubbling over. What are you even doing here then? Shouldn't you be on some fancy set or hiding in a mansion with bodyguards? Why live in a normal apartment with normal people like me? Min-jae's eyes flashed. Because normal people know how to respect privacy. That stung, but Tasha folded her arms, refusing to back down. Wow, you really think you're above everyone, huh? Newsflash. Just because you're on a poster doesn't mean you get to treat me like trash. For a moment, his expression cracked. He looked away, his voice quieter. You don't understand what it's like. Then explain it to me, Tasha said firmly, softer this time. Because right now, all I see is some broody guy with a secret. Min-jae hesitated, conflict flickering in his eyes. For a heartbeat, it looked like he might open up. But then, just as quickly, the wall slammed back into place. There's nothing to explain, he muttered. Snatching the poster from her hands, he shoved it back into his pocket. You keep your life, I'll keep mine. That's how we survive this arrangement. Tasha frowned, her voice rising in frustration. Survive? Min-jae, we're not stranded on a desert island. We're roommates, and you don't have to act like I'm some disease you're trying not to catch. He froze at her words, his back still turned. Silence stretched heavy in the air until Tasha, with a dry laugh, tried to lighten it. You know, this explains a lot. The late nights, the mask, the mysterious attitude. You're basically Batman, except with better hair. Min-jae shot her a look so sharp it could cut steel, but she caught the faintest twitch at the corner of his lips before he turned away. And then, without another word, he disappeared into his room, slamming the door shut. Tasha leaned back on the sofa, shaking her head in disbelief. Of all the people in Seoul, I had to end up roommates with a celebrity. Her life had just gotten a lot more complicated. The following days were a tug-of-war of silence. Tasha Johnson tried her best to ignore the fact that her roommate was not just any man, but Lee Min-jae, a rising Korean actor whose face was plastered on glossy posters. Every time she caught a glimpse of him, she couldn't help but wonder how many people out there were swooning over the same sharp jawline and stormy eyes that only looked at her with irritation. She had promised herself not to bring it up again, not to poke at the mystery that was Min-jae. Still, curiosity simmered beneath her skin. One chilly Saturday morning, Tasha woke up with a pounding headache. Her body felt heavy, her throat scratchy. She groaned, dragging herself out of bed. It wasn't the flu, but Seoul's sudden drop in temperature had caught her off guard. She shuffled into the living room wrapped in her blanket like a cocoon, hoping the warmth of the apartment would ease the ache. To her surprise, Min-jae was already there, sitting on the sofa with a script in his hand. He looked up briefly, his eyes flickering to her disheveled form. His brow furrowed. You look terrible. Tasha shot him a weak glare. Wow, thanks. Just what a sick girl wants to hear. He didn't respond immediately, just closed the script and stood. Tasha expected him to retreat to his room, but instead, he disappeared into the kitchen. She pulled the blanket tighter, shivering. A few minutes later, he returned, not with his usual mug of coffee, but with a steaming cup of tea. Here. He held it out stiffly, as if the act of kindness physically pained him. Tasha blinked. Wait, is this for me? He gave her a look. No, for the wall behind you. Despite her grogginess, she chuckled, taking the cup. Well, thanks, Batman. He sat back down, opening his script again. But his eyes didn't move across the page. They lingered on her as she blew gently on the tea. The steam curled around her face, softening the exhaustion in her eyes. Tasha took a sip, surprised by the soothing taste of ginger and honey. This is really good. Min-jae shrugged. My grandmother used to make it when I was sick. That caught her off guard. It was the first personal detail he had ever shared with her. She tilted her head, studying him. So you do have a heart. He didn't answer, but the corner of his mouth twitched ever so slightly, as if he were fighting a smile. For a while, silence stretched between them, but it was different this time. Not heavy, not hostile, just quiet. Tasha leaned back against the sofa, sipping the tea. You know, you're not so scary when you're not barking orders. Min-jae's eyes flicked to her, his expression unreadable. Don't get used to it. She grinned despite herself. Too late. Later that afternoon, as Tasha dozed off under her blanket, she faintly heard Min-jae moving around the apartment. When she cracked an eye open, she noticed something odd. The blanket had been adjusted more snugly around her shoulders. And on the coffee table sat another steaming cup of tea, waiting for her when she woke. He hadn't said a word. But for the first time since moving in, Tasha realized maybe, just maybe, her roommate wasn't completely made of ice after all. The weekend came and went, and for the first time, Tasha Johnson felt like her apartment wasn't such a hostile place. Min Jae still kept his distance, still hid behind his scripts and late-night outings, but the memory of him quietly making her tea lingered like a warmth she couldn't shake. Still, Seoul was waiting, and Tasha had no plans of locking herself away indoors. On Monday afternoon, after her classes, she decided to explore Myeongdong, a vibrant shopping district filled with street food, fashion, and flashing neon signs. Bundled in a thick coat, she blended easily into the crowd, or so she thought. She was leaning over a stall, examining a pair of earrings, when she felt it. A camera flash, then another. First, she thought she was imagining things. But soon, several men with professional cameras were circling like vultures. Their lenses weren't aimed at the jewelry. They were aimed at her. Confused, Tasha stepped back. Excuse me? The questions came rapid-fire in Korean, their voices sharp and demanding. She only caught pieces. Who are you? Are you his girlfriend? Her pulse quickened. Whose girlfriend? What are they talking about? Then one of them shoved a photo in her face. An image of her, from days ago, walking into the apartment building with Min Jae trailing a few steps behind her. Tasha's heart dropped. Oh no. Before she could react, one of the paparazzi lunged closer, shoving his camera nearly into her face. Miss, are you dating Lee Min Jae? The crowd around them started whispering, pulling out phones, recording. Panic bubbled in Tasha's chest. She raised her hands, backing away. I don't know what you're talking about. But the circle only tightened. Then, out of nowhere, a hand grabbed hers and yanked her free. Move! A deep voice snapped in Korean. It was Min Jae. He pulled her firmly through the crowd, his other hand raised to block the cameras. The paparazzi shouted louder, flashing lights exploding around them. But Min Jae didn't slow down until they had ducked into a narrow alley behind a row of shops, the noise of the street muffled by brick walls. Tasha leaned against the wall, breathless. Her hand was still trapped in his. Are you crazy? He hissed, finally turning to her. His eyes burned with frustration. Do you know what you just did? Me? Tasha shot back, equally flustered. I was just shopping. They came out of nowhere. That's how it works, he snapped. They don't need a reason. They see you near me once, and suddenly you're their new headline. Tasha swallowed, guilt and fear tangling in her chest. I didn't ask for this. His expression softened for a fraction of a second, then hardened again. No, you didn't, which is why you need to be careful. From now on, you don't go near the building entrance when I'm there. You don't walk with me in public. You pretend we're strangers. She stared at him, stunned. Pretend we're strangers? We live together, Min Jae. How is that even? Because it's the only way to protect you. His voice was sharp, but underneath, it trembled with something else. Worry. Silence stretched between them. His hand was still holding hers. Tight, almost too tight. When he realized it, he let go abruptly, stepping back. Tasha exhaled slowly. Her heart was racing, not just from fear, but from the way he had shielded her, pulled her out, held on like he would never let go. For the first time, she saw him not as the cold, brooding actor, but as a man carrying a weight far heavier than she could imagine. And for the first time, Min Jae realized just how dangerous it was for both of them to be seen together. Life inside the apartment turned uneasy after the paparazzi incident. Min Jae had gone into full damage control mode, avoiding walking with Tasha, slipping into the building at odd hours, and snapping whenever she forgot to be careful. But outside of the apartment, Tasha's life kept moving. She had classes, friends, and a growing circle of people who made Seoul feel a little less lonely. One of them was Park Ji-hoon, a cheerful classmate with a smile that could brighten the dullest lecture. He was warm, polite, and endlessly patient with her halting Korean. On Wednesday afternoon, After class, Ji-hoon approached her with 2 steaming cups of coffee. "Tasha SSI," he said with a grin, handing her one. "You always look so tired after Professor Kim's lecture. You need this more than I do." Episode 1 ends here. Watch out for episode 2 coming up tomorrow. Thank you for watching. If you find the story interesting, please do well to leave us a comment and suggestion. Also like, share, and subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification icon so that you will get notified about every new story. You can also tell us where you are watching from. We like to know more about you.